Welcome everybody to another episode of Into Your Analysis. I'm David Jones,
I'm Evan Westman.
I'm Jelani T. Kelly.
and today we're talking about The Exorcist, what many like to call the scariest movie ever made. So before we get into it, just some background on the film if people are unaware. There's a lot of cultural conversations about the film, a lot of issues with the MPAA ratings board. People thought that Warner was like bought in to give it an R rating and not an X rating because they were mad that the kids have been seeing it. And just some award history. It's the first horror film to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, probably a lot with the cultural conversation at the time. It had 9 other nominations. The screenwriter and novelist who wrote the 1971 novel that this is adapted from won Best Adapted Screenplay. It was also the highest grossing R-rated horror film until it came around in 2016, 2017, I don't remember. And that took
that
the money
long?
from that.
Wow, that's a long time to hold that record.
Didn't
very,
it also
very
won
long.
Best Sound, didn't it?
Yeah, it won Best Sound. I won a few others, I think. Or maybe it was just nominated for the others, I'm not sure.
No, it was nominated. It won 2.
Okay. And then in 2010, the Library of Congress selected the film for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as being, quote, culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. This is your first time watching it, both of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm just going to go into my just brief reaction because it's my 4th time watching, and then I want to hear what you guys think as first-time viewers. The first time I watched this movie, I wanted to see it because everyone said it's the scariest horror film ever made. I don't think it's that scary, but I also am not that closely tied to religion, so maybe that has a different impact for you. But keeps me coming back to it and watching it is just my love for filmmaking. I don't just see it as one of the best horror films ever made. I truly see it as one of the best films ever made, and I love that decade of 70s filmmaking. It is fantastic. Even the effects today, when everything happens in the room and the wardrobe skirts across and closes the door, 50 years old, all practical, and it looks fantastic, and I'm still super immersed in the direction, the aesthetics, the acting, just the editing. Chef's kiss. But yeah, so what did you guys think as first time watching?
Can I just ask before we get into that, how old were you when you first saw it?
18?
Okay. I was just curious for that. Jelani, do you want to go first, or do you want me to take it?
I mean, we'll get into it, but I didn't. This wasn't for me. I didn't. As someone who easily gets scared when it comes to horror movies, this wasn't it for me, Chief. Maybe it's like David said, maybe it has something to do with the whole religion angle. I'm not very religious anymore, but nah. But you go ahead, Evan.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this was a big blind spot for me, so I was glad to finally check it off. I kind of like picked up. I don't know if this is true for both of you, but like, this is something that I know through references a bit. Like, there's episodes of Futurama and the Boondocks that like really heavily reference this, and then there's the part when they were doing the power of Christ compels you. I could only think of the Vine where the girl's trying to like exorcise her dog with a cross. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but she just yells it, and obviously that didn't exist at the time of the movie, so it's really unfair, but I couldn't not think of it. In terms of the religious side, like I did grow up Catholic, so I mean it did. I don't think it really hit that different for me because of that, but I think it's kind of funny how movies tend to portray Catholicism and like priests and mass as a lot cooler than they really are. Like, this movie makes priests look kind of badass, and they make mass look like this super dramatic thing, and like, if you've ever been to mass, it's just it's not really like that. I mean, it can try to be in some cases, but it's, you know, it's not. I just think it's kind of funny how in movies it kind of hypes it up to be like, I don't know, just so over dramatic. Not a gripe or anything. It's just a trend that I've noticed. And just like, I don't know if this will be touched on in any of our topics. So I really appreciated that, like, when they showed the actual exorcism, that scene is completely uninterrupted. Like, I was really glad while watching it. I was like, it's great that we're not cutting away to the mom or anything like that. Like, it's like a full 9-minute scene and we just stay there. And I think that helps, like, keep the tension of the moment up. But it's like, it's compelling enough that we don't actually need it broken up or anything. I thought that was a strong point, and I don't know that our topics will cover that. So, yeah, on the whole, I gotta say I'm kind of mid on this, but I was saying to Jelani beforehand, like, I'm gonna rewatch this at some point and try it again just to see, like, maybe it just will hit for me on a second try, and didn't this time. So, time will tell, I guess.
All right.
Yeah. Going into this, I only knew the your mother blanks blank in hell line, and then the fact that she like vomits green stuff on someone. Other than that, I I've seen references, like Evan said, the Boondocks is probably the biggest one I can remember.
Scary movie too. Anybody? It's a good time.
You know what's wild, like, and I'll get into it with my topic, but like the absurdity of the entire situation paired with the acting kind of reminded me of a Scary movie. And I don't know who I'm offending by saying that, but it, call me mean if you want, it was kind of funny. But like I said, we'll dive into that with my topic.
All right, let's just do your topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
My topic is shock value does not equal good. This movie is number 1 on Rotten Tomatoes scariest horror movies of all time list. It's actually number 1 on a lot of lists. And why? I'm really hoping David will like open my eyes and like explain, because I'm scared very easily when it comes to fictional media, mainly like stupid horror videos on YouTube. Like it'll keep me thinking after, like I have the irrational fear of, oh, I watched it, so now whatever that monster is, now it knows I exist and it's after me. And I'll sleep with one eye open. But this, as far as a horror movie goes, it was 1973, and I'm trying to give it that like grace, but like no. I also read under Rotten Tomatoes like list that people fainted, and there were reports of nausea.
Yeah.
So I guess
traffic.
Okay.
Yeah, like leaving the theater like dazed, not seeing they were going into the streets, all sorts of stuff.
I guess it did its job for the time, but it is literally 50 years later.
Yep.
Holy crap. Nah. Why, y'all?
Well, I think it's a fair, like, just for context, David, you kind of mentioned this, like, the rating system was barely had just replaced the Hays Code 5 years ago. So like,
I was thinking
this
about
was
that.
the era where like filmmakers were like, awesome, we can do anything now. So they were like really pushing the envelope. But I'm sure that must have been a little bit of a strange experience for audiences who, like, some of them were probably into it and like, thank God we can do this now. But somebody who's still in that Hays Code mindset going to a movie in 1973 might have been like, oh God, like, I thought I had more of a safety net here.
Yeah, my mom was 17 when she saw it, and she refuses to ever watch it again. And she had one of those experiences leaving the theater where she just completely had no idea where she was in Center City. Like, she was just like, where do I go? Where am I? And I've never had a movie do that to me. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever relate to that on that kind of level, but I do think it's also important to note like the cultural conversation going on in America at that time as we started to break away from religion and institutions, especially in the 70s. And that whole thing being brought up into the conversation of the movie, I think that startled some people. And just like the iconography of it was like a first time for a lot of people. Like nowadays, when you watch a paranormal movie, you expect like to see the person's breath and oh my god, now the room is cold, the spirit must be here, and all of this is established really in the impact of The Exorcist being the first to really send that home. And just the way we take in like media now, like you can see things so much more horrific on HBO on your TV at home or Netflix now or Amazon Prime, whereas just there weren't as many things getting made then, especially not things that were trying to push that envelope.
Mm.
Yeah, and again, like, what if you're like just breaking past that threshold? Like, I'm sure it kind of took a minute for people to just feel out like, okay, like we had these restrictions, like this is all we're allowed to do for 40 years or whatever. Then you come into the 70s and it's like, all right, we can do anything, but what do people actually want? Like, how much is too much for them? What are they going to be into? Like, what's actually going to turn them off? And I think that's something that's still evolving. Like, that's kind of a constant thing. And it goes beyond, like, content that the ratings are concerned with. But especially, like, in this age where all of a sudden you have this brand new freedom, like, this feels like it's like I think it is good to look at this in that context.
Yeah, and that was even I was reading that when I was just looking into this film before. That was something where the screenwriter and the director disagreed on like the crucifix masturbation scene. The screenwriter did not want that in the movie. It was not in his book originally, and he found that it added nothing to the film, and he didn't want it in the movie. And the director fought him on it and said, we need to have it in the movie and just wait and see. And it actually became one of the most talked about scenes in the entire film, and the director cited it to how it's this thematic kind of look at religion and sex and what was happening at that time and everything. And then it did become so popular that the screenwriter found it really, quote, he said, quote, it was depressing.
I was thinking about that scene in context of this topic too. Like, I don't want to like assume what you kind of meant with this title, Jelani, but like I was looking at or thinking about that scene with like, I think you could go either way with calling that gratuitous and unnecessary and like just there for shock value, or you could say there is a purpose there. I wasn't thinking about it with like the symbolic context you were mentioning, David, but like I think that is a very good scene for establishing this is a possession, because there's a lot of the movie that's spent like speculating on that. So that does kind of solidify it, because it's like too painful to not like for her to be doing it just for attention. But I think also I couldn't argue with somebody either back then or now if they said like that's gratuitous. We didn't need something that graphic with a 12, 13-year-old kid. Like, I don't think... I'm not, like, necessarily gonna, like, judge that one way or the other. I think there's, like, a purpose to it, and I don't think it's, like... I don't personally find it to be too extreme, but if somebody had that reaction, like, I think that's very valid.
Yeah, the first time I watched it with some friends, and one friend was, it's probably similar to Jelani, that was a scene that he found very funny. Or no, she found very funny, and she was laughing throughout that scene. And I was like, oh my god. Like, especially when, like, everything goes down with the mother and everything right there, and, like, the minute that happens in the backhand, like, she was cracking up. And I was like, oof.
Well, I think that can be
right now.
I think that's... I'm not actually that surprised at that, because I can't think of any specific example, but like I've had that where I think I've watched a couple like Black Mirror episodes with friends, and those can go to some pretty extreme places. And like, but if you're in a group setting, like sometimes you do just kind of crack up at it because you're like, I don't know, when you're with other people, sometimes it just maybe it's to diffuse the tension or whatever, but like it can be kind of fun to like like you just do laugh at stuff that gets super fucked up really quickly, and like but I wouldn't do that watching those by myself. Like I don't know, that just isn't. And maybe I'm extrapolating too much from this, but like I think that can be some of the fun of watching horror movies.
100%.
Is just kind of like watch it with your friends and isn't this kind of ridiculous, and makes it a little less scary to laugh at it.
Yeah, like I always laugh at the scene when they open the door and the priest that comes in at the end to save the day is just like killed off screen dead on the bed. I laugh at that every time.
Like I said, I was laughing just at the absurdity of it. Like, even watching by myself, I was kind of like zoomed because I wasn't invested in anybody. That's another point I'll get to within my topic. I wasn't invested in any of the characters. So I was kind of like zoomed out, and by that point, I'm like just looking at it like this out of context. Even with context, this looks absolutely stupid and funny because it makes sense, but at the same time, like I said, without context, it makes zero sense. Let Jesus F you, and she's stabbing herself in the... What are we doing here? And
Well, I think it's a... Well, okay, I don't want to cut you off there.
No, go ahead.
So, I have a question for you with this topic. Like, do you think that this movie is worse? Like, do you think it's trying too hard to go for the shock value, and, like, it's... like, that makes it worse and makes it campy? Or, like, I don't know. What... Basically, I guess I want you to explain the title of your topic here. Like, how is the shock value not good here?
So I think it's due to what we've been exposed to in 50 years of having horror content around. Like, I'm really trying to put myself, or I was really trying to put myself into the perspective of somebody who was watching this in 1974, when stuff like this wasn't readily available. There was no internet back then. There was no dark web, no creepypastas, none of that, no fake horror videos. And after being exposed, just even with them, just like the past 10, 20 years, like this is a pretty easy watch when it comes to shock value. So back then, I understand, like, this was shocking to a lot of people. I'm not gonna like justify like the nausea and fainting and whatnot. Maybe, I don't know, but after being exposed to tons of horror films that have come out since then, like, this is, like you said, it kind of reads as campy. Like this, like what's happening here? Why are we doing this?
Personally, I didn't read it as campy. I thought it all kind of held up. But I'm not surprised that you do see it as campy. Like, I don't know why I do and you don't, but like, I think you can take it either way. Like, I think it is taking itself seriously. So that can work, and you can just kind of be like, okay, yeah, like, this is characters behaving like as they would under the circumstances. But whenever you do take something seriously, you do kind of run the risk of being campy.
I think that's what it is. It's taking itself really seriously. Mm-hmm. Like with God, I forget her name. I think it starts with an E. Chris, the mother, with
Yeah,
her
Ellen
with her
Burstyn.
acting, yes, um, with her acting and her daughter. Like I kind of felt bad at first, but over time, with her like screaming and falling apart, I'm just like, all right, bro.
Yeah. Weirdly, the movie that's coming to mind for me as a comparison with that is I just went to Napoleon last week, the one that just came out,
How was it?
and to be honest, like wasn't I didn't have my eyes open the whole time. I was trying. I think I was a little bit tired going into it, but it was I wanted to sleep. But there's moments in it that like it's taking itself like it's presenting itself very seriously as like this historical drama, and Joaquin Phoenix's performance is like very straightforward, but then he just has to say some just wild lines that like I don't know. I was watching it and I was like, Joaquin Phoenix seems like a smart enough person to I respect his commitment to this performance, but he's got to know it feels goofy. Like he's got to know what this looks like, and I think there's moments of it that do like kind of work, but also like me and the 10 people in the theater that I was in, because I went on like a Thursday afternoon. We laughed at a lot of parts that I don't think they were meant to be funny at all. And that is not the greatest movie to compare to, but I think that's a risk you run when you are having actors do a very straight ahead performance. And if it is with something heightened like this, you can make something so aggressively shock value that it's just like, what the hell is this doing here? Like, you can bring it too far. Like, I think that the typical thing I think of is like, you don't want to push shock value stuff too far because you don't want to upset people or offend people. Maybe some filmmakers do. I think there's a couple that are into that. But I think the other risk you run is people are going to think it's ridiculous and not take you seriously.
Yeah, I think a lot of horror movies, I would say a majority really toe that line of like just unintentional camp or intentional camp. I'm not sure sometimes. A lot of them in that genre can be read that way. And especially The Exorcist, I think it's very true of, because you could just, if you ever do go and watch the opening scene from Scary Movie 2, the only thing they change is the punchlines. They keep all of the setups from this film, and they just have to add a more absurd punchline to drive it that much more home and be that intentional of its own camp. So I definitely think there is like something there for that. Which is why some people, I think, can enjoy it in like a sincere way and take it earnestly and maybe be terrified of it, and some people can just laugh at it and still enjoy the 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really fine line. Like, you're approaching the line, and then the more serious you take it, it's either going to be hilarious to a lot of people, or people are taking it super serious, like as intended. So I'm one of those. It's just like, this is goofy. So to continue with my topic, on top of that, I guess some of the, because like I said, I wasn't scared at any point during this film, and it was strange for me because this is supposed to be like top tier horror film. I guess some of the horror I just listed some would come from some of the weird things that happen, like Reagan peeing while telling Bert he's gonna die, telling her family and visitors to F her, crawling down the stairs upside down, bleeding from her mouth. That caught me by surprise because I didn't remember that clip at all. Still didn't scare me. It was just, yeah, it didn't scare me. It was just weird. I was just like, oh, that's here. And then they cut away from it.
It looks good still, too.
Oh, no, it looked great. It came out great, but still. The stabbing scene we mentioned. And then subsequently, like 3 seconds later, putting her mother's face down there. Telling her to lick her.
Me. Yep.
Yep. that was something.
Anytime the angry British voice comes out, I think it's hysterical.
Yeah. Then slapping her mother and nearly crushing her with the wardrobe is just like, all right. And then, of course, the infamous line, "Your mother blanks blank in hell." Yeah, none of that terrified me. I was just like, is this supposed to be the horror of it? Is it the makeup that's scary to people?
Yeah, I think the makeup ages well though. Like they do a
great.
good job making her look just like emaciated and like insane. And some of it is just that I think okay, one part that I think does feel a little bit cheesy now is the green eyes. I think post Michael Jackson's Thriller music video, like I don't know if you can make that look not goofy. But the 1973 that hadn't come out yet, so you know, I don't know. It just hit a little bit like when he turns to the camera at the end of that music video with the like glowing eyes.
And her performance is just incredible. Like I don't know.
Oh,
how
yeah.
they got, like, a sixth
absolutely.
grader to do
I'm not
amazing.
gonna downplay that.
I was gonna ask. Like I looked up, and it doesn't. It seems like it's the same actor the whole time. Like they didn't.
Yeah.
That's an insanely good performance. Then
No, it's
like,
great.
yeah, like whether no matter how you read it, like hats off. That's an amazing performance.
Yeah, but it
How
killed her
old was she
career.
at the time? How old was Linda
I
at
think
the
she was
time?
12 or 13.
So she was actually 12. Okay. No, that's nuts.
Yeah,
That's nuts. So to continue, saying sure these things happen during the movie, they're shocking, but all they really did was I don't think I laughed out loud. I just looked at the situation and thought like, oh, this is funny. Definitely made me raise an eyebrow a few times. But like these shocking things that happen, I don't think it made for a good horror movie, and I'll explain why. Obviously, the pacing is one. The pace, it wasn't. I think it takes way too long to, and I'll also explain this. My notes are kind of jumbled. Like I'm just not a fan of slow burn pacing. So I think it takes way too long to get to the point of the film, which starts somewhere around the halfway mark. Like I looked at it. I looked at your topic, David, and we were like 53 minutes in before
yeah, it's like
we
right an
start to
hour
see.
when that stuff kicks off.
It's a long
Yeah,
time.
and I'm just like, this
Yeah.
is, and
I
we don't even spend, dare I say, like 20 minutes with Reagan before that happens, before we see like the transformation. So we're spending so much more time on things that I don't think need to be as focused on, like finding that pendant thing in the beginning. That was like 10 minutes. That was a really long intro with the digging and then Kara spending time with his mother. I get why that needs to be there. I don't think it needed to be as long, with him like wrapping her leg and
I agree.
her
100%.
dimmy. Okay.
Oh my god, Demi. I say that to my mom all the time.
Also, when is that a nickname for Damien?
I don't know.
I don't-
Maybe it's like an Italian thing. I don't know.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
Or a 70s thing.
And then being on set with Chris and her activist film. I don't even remember what
Yeah.
they were active.
I did not get what that was there to do. Like, it sets up like, oh, the director dies. Okay, why couldn't he be her boss at some other job? Like, that was a very expensive, probably, to have that too.
I was fine with her being an actor. Like, that made sense as to why they had as much money as they did to throw it. The exploration as far as like the possession with she had like 88 doctors at some point. That made sense. But that was a lot of extras, like even for a fake acting set. And why it needed to be an activist film, I don't get. But And then the length of the movie in general kind of mixed with the pacing. Like, it didn't need to be no 2 hours, bro. Yeah, that's all I had to add with that. The characters, in quotes, I didn't find any of them interesting. If I was tied down and forced to pick one, I'd pick the demon. Straight up, I don't care about any of even the titled Exorcist Karras. I didn't even know his name was Karras before I watched this movie. Like, I do not care. Backstories, emotions, anything that's going down with it. I think I started to feel bad for the mother at one point, and then I just stopped caring. Yeah, call me mean. Like I said before, call me mean if you will, but the absurdity of just this whole, not the premise, but what was happening with the possession itself, like the things I mentioned, it was just funny to me. And then it felt like, I'm not going to go as far as to say it was a sin, but I felt less than nothing when one of the main characters, who it is kind of titled after, The Exorcist, Father Karras, leaps out of the window to save Reagan. Like, literally, that's all it took. We spent all that work, all that build-up, all that research, and all you needed to do was just have the demon jump into your body and with you saying, take me instead, and kill yourself. And that doesn't even really kill the demon, if you did. Okay.
Yeah, it seems a little too earthbound now that you're saying it. Like, because all of the, like, spiritual stuff they do on it, like, it's not like that's useless. Like, it works to a certain degree.
Yeah, it responds to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does seem a little strange that's, like, especially if it can jump hosts, like, why would killing the host body matter? Maybe there's something I'm missing, but yeah, good point. That could be a plot hole. We just owned this movie, guys.
I love that part.
And then the whole thing with, like, him revealing it wasn't holy water, it was tap water. Okay, so the demon's
so he just placebo affected the demon too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the whole exorcist, like, it really did nothing, because the demon stayed there, and then he was like, take me instead, you bastard, and he did, and then he killed himself, and I was just like, so it really should just be called the suicidal guy, like the suicidal father. Is that a better title? Because
no.
What? No, it's not as catchy. No.
Yeah, David, build us back from this, because, like, I was coming into this like Jelani, like, hoping you would convince me, but right now Jelani's kind of selling me on, like, anyone. This
We're
maybe
all just
is
saying our own experiences.
Plot holes.
Yeah. No,
well, plot holes don't bother me in films.
They don't bother me that much, but
have great plot holes. But to me, this, especially the ending of this, I've always never really been able to trace the consistency of the demon or the religion from the pendant through to the end. But I do just like, especially in, like, horror films, especially nowadays, like, the way you save someone from a demon is, like, they bring them back their humanity, and I find it so exhausting. Like, in Conjuring, she remembers all the good times with her kids and her family, and now she's able to beat the demon and expel it out of her body, but no one ever asks where that demon goes. No one who watches these movies is that invested in that. They just want to know that the demon is beaten. And with Insidious, the dad goes and finds his son and brings his son home, so I really like how in this movie there is no beating the demon. Like, you get that hurrah when that guy from the beginning comes in, and you get the iconic shot of the poster, and it looks so good, and the scores and overdrive and everything, and you're like, oh my god, yes, the Catholicism as a person is here, and he's gonna mess it up, and we're gonna be good. And then they kill him off screen. You walk in, you see him, he's dead, and it's like, well, there was your final hope. There's no beating this. And it's either the demon's gonna just kill Reagan, or, as we see, you can take the demon into you and you have to kill yourself. And I like that. I like that kind of choice. I prefer that to, like, someone's humanity expelling a demon.
I can see that. I also feel like, especially if you have a concept, like, I don't know if there's a lot of, like, lore or, like, because, like, I'm a few years out of like being in Catholicism as a religion, but they're like, I think there's explanations of like what they believe demons are, and that, I don't know if you want to call it mythology. I think that's a word they would disagree with using, but like there's probably stuff you could draw from that, like within religious documents or the Bible or anything like that. So you could maybe like, for this movie specifically, or any movie with a demon, like establish some rules and even cite like real documents, and your audience could be like, okay, well, that's not how I want a demon to work, but you have like some kind of thing. Like, you don't have to convince the audience that it's real, but you can at least set up some rules for it to function on, so that when the demon is driven out, you can be like, all right, yeah, because in Leviticus whatever, it says like this is how to deal with a demon, or something like that. It doesn't even have to be real. You could make up a fake book and have it be cited. It doesn't have to be like some real life book. What?
I was gonna say the Book of Reagan. Add that to the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, if this series there's been a lot of sequels. Like, maybe I'm sure that's not a real thing, is it?
I don't
okay.
remember that, but yeah, the sequels or
No,
something.
but like legitimately, by the time, like, I don't know, have we had 10 of these at this point? We've had a lot, right?
Yeah, we were up there. We're probably around 7 or 8.
Yeah, by the time you get that
Exorcist
deep.
movies?
Yeah, I think there's like 3 or 4 that actually are in like Exorcist 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then there's, I think, 1 or 2 that are in the world of The Exorcist, but they have a different name, and then now Exorcist Believer.
Yeah, so by that point, you can have somebody who's like documented this possession and like come up, like studied it, made rules based on it. Obviously, for this first movie, you don't have something like that. But I think to say that, like, and David, I don't want to like invalidate your reaction of like, oh, I don't mind, like.
No, I know my reaction's valid, but you can keep going.
Well, I just wanted that to be stated, because I'm kind of like giving the counterpoint here. But like, I think there is a very common and understandable reaction as an audience, that if you're gonna do something like this, if the whole goal of the movie is exorcising this demon, then you kind of got to establish some kind of rules, that, because there's obviously rules that bind this demon. So like, you kind of got to signal that to us at some point. And again, maybe you could, obviously this works without doing that. And, you know, this is existing in a pre-internet era where people didn't do like what we're doing right now, and didn't watch stuff at 0.025 speed or whatever. Like, they didn't watch it, they couldn't even watch it on VHS 20 times in a week at this point. Like, you just didn't have that like type of audience experience. But I think it is a valid reaction to be like, that's how they kill the demon? Well, that's dumb. Like, because there's nothing to really support it. Like, why would that stop it? So, I don't know. I don't think it makes it that much worse. Like, it didn't hit for me. But hearing Jelani break that down, I'm like, yeah, what you got? Like, point me to the part of the movie that like explained, like, set that up. I don't think it's there.
Yeah, we didn't even know it could jump host.
No.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's like breaking the rules of it or anything. And also, like, clearly that's not a hindrance on a franchise to have stuff like, I mean, just look at the Force in Star Wars. There's about 50 things that can do that it couldn't like 3 movies ago or something. Like, every single time, like every single movie, I feel like establishes new Force powers that some of them I think are kind of a stretch personally. But like, it still is like, I think you don't need to explain the demon hopping bodies. But if you're gonna build up to this exorcism, and I do like the exorcism scene, I don't even think we need to be like, all right, we don't need to go through the whole book, but you bring in this character who is like somebody who has experience doing this. So we trust him. We trust that he knows what he's doing. The demon is responding to him. So I can take that at face value, but that's all very spiritual. And yeah, like I think there isn't enough made of the fact that Father Karras pulls a placebo effect on the demon at the one point with the holy water. Like if you can throw regular water at it and get some kind of reaction, that's important to the climax.
Yeah, I also think it's always made me wonder too. Like, did the demon just really like Reagan? Like, is that why he hung out in that body for so long? Because like, he easily breaks the binds and starts levitating, killed that guy with no problem, can do pretty much anything he wants, and he could go into any host apparently if he wants to. So what was it that kept him in Reagan? Did he just like seeing the sheer terror that he caused that family? Did he just like the slow draining of a kid, and he's like likes taking life from someone so young? There's a lot that is not really established in his intention, especially with that and his powers. But you know,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of, especially supernatural horror movies, tend to do that a lot. Stephen King cites it as horror coming from folk tales and fairy tales, and how simplistic those stories are, and the binary of good versus evil. But who knows?
Yeah. And like maybe I'm being a little bit unfair in saying like we needed rules super established because but I think there's an invisible line, and I don't think this movie crosses it egregiously. Like to compare to something else that we've talked about, like this is not Lucy. This is not like taking this concept that is, a little bit far fetched and then just going insane with it. Like it's not going that far off the rails, but it's going outside of the lines that it seems to establish for itself. Not egregiously, but enough that you're like, I don't know if that works. So I think that's worth noting at least.
Because I think we should continue.
Yeah, sorry.
No. That was a good tangent. Well, not really a tangent, but
No, I think we're still pretty
yeah.
on topic. We're doing good.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we're on the movie. We aren't on. I think we're well outside of your topic, though.
To finish up my point as to what didn't make it a good horror movie, I mentioned also the scares. Like, what scares? The fact that she turns her head 2 different times in the movie. Ooh, that almost got me. The fact that she pulls a contortionist bit on the steps. The fact that there are flashing frames of a Nosferatu looking MF staring at the camera. Like, I don't. Or maybe the horror is the mother's POV, where she doesn't know what's wrong with her daughter, even though the audience does, by a certain point, which dives into Evan's topic. This isn't the first possession film ever made. I looked up possession films, and there was one in 1960, The Haunting. I don't know if there's possession in that. I know it's a ghost film just based on the title. I didn't dive deep into that, but I'm sure they were rarer by this time, but there had to be a good chunk of 1973 folks that figured it out before the characters did in the film. Even the title gives it away. Like,
Yeah, I think everyone kind of knew that going in.
That's a lot of what my topic is about.
Yeah,
But
and
finish
we
out
can
yours.
switch that in a second. Yeah, and then also, as I mentioned before, perhaps my numbness. This is all my opinion on it, of course. But perhaps my numbness to this film is a attempt to evoke emotion is due to like media coming out today, as I'm sure like back in 1973, this was wild to see. And to add a button to my topic, I was frankly just kind of bored by the movie. Like, not even the possession itself was intriguing to me. It's not like possession is something I look forward or look for to watch in movies and horror movies, but I was just like, okay, she's possessed now. We're at that point in the movie that I've seen clips of, and we're here. And then dude kills himself. So, yeah. Shock value doesn't automatically equal a good movie in my opinion. So that's it. And unless you guys had anything else, that was all I had for it.
I did, but I think we should probably move on to some other topics. And I covered everything for this movie. I was gonna like broadly ask what we think like the line is between when is shock value good and not, but we do have to get through these other stuff. So
To your topic,
I'm glad we
Evan.
brought this up though. Yeah, just to close it out, I'm glad we brought that up because shock value is such a big part of horror, and we didn't cover that in the others. So I'm glad you brought that as a topic. So for my topic, we have gotten into this already a bit, but I was thinking about like how we as the audience are ahead of the characters in a lot of this, and kind of like what do you do with that? How do you avoid it if you can't? What do you do instead? Because like Jelani was saying a couple minutes ago, from the title, we know that possession is going to be part of like that's the central hook of this movie, and we spend kind of a lot of time just ruling out other possibilities, and that's not a problem in itself because I think if you don't spend the time to rule out other possibilities, then the characters look dumb. Like they do have to do their due diligence and be like, all right, is this some kind of psychological thing? Is it medical? And we have all those scenes. I think the problem with it, and Jelani, you were basically saying this earlier, is like it's just not efficient. Like we need a lot of the setup in those earlier sections, like basically the first hour of the movie, but we don't need an hour of it. I don't think we need 20 minutes, maybe 30. Like I don't think there. I think you could condense a lot of that, and in terms of like eliminating other possibilities, I think it just could have been a quicker scene. Like I was thinking about an alternate way to write this where say we start the movie in Father Kara's POV, we get like a little bit of setup with his mom because you need that for later, but aside from that you don't really need the other setup with him. Like that's kind of the one thing you need to confirm. And then you have Chris, the mom, come to him after like everything has happened and just present to him like, hey, my daughter started acting weird a month ago. Here's all these things. I've already gone to all the doctors and everything. Like, I don't think that would be better necessarily. Like, I'm not trying to say that's a better movie, but you could do it like that and just kind of like get to things quicker. Like, I think we've seen plenty of movies that take more of that approach where it's like we're just gonna like quickly get through in a montage or something. Like I was thinking earlier today about like Gone Girl as a comparison where like we know from the title this is gonna be about a woman who goes missing, so as soon as she goes missing, like 5 or 10 minutes into the movie, like we get a pretty quick scene that's just like, here's the police and Ben Affleck establishing like, all right, we're gonna just treat this as a missing persons case now. Like and it checks off the boxes. It's like, all right, we're gonna like do our due diligence, but it's one scene. It's maybe like 2 minutes at most, and then we're off to the races. And like, the audience isn't having to wait for the characters to catch up to what they already know.
I think I'm giving this film just a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because it's supernatural as
That's
opposed
fair.
to being based in science. So I feel like they have to go through all of the again, I don't like agreeing with you. I don't think it needed to take nowhere near as long, but because you have to get through all of the scientific possibilities before saying, all right, this is something science can't handle. Like, we got to go to religion. Like, I can understand that. It taking kind of
Yeah,
a little bit longer with that.
that's a very fair point, and I think that actually does like make it somewhat necessary that like the version I was pitching where it's just Chris doing that in dialogue. Like, I think that would be a lot weaker if that's all we saw. Like, the fact that we do see all the stuff in the hospital and everything, like, even if you, like, I don't know if that's accurate, But for us as an audience, that's medical stuff happening. We have like brain scans that we are seeing. Like, we know by the time that she goes to him, like, we have exhausted that option. And again, I think it spends too long on it, but there's a value in it. And yeah, like you said, Jelani, it's like, because it's supernatural, like you kind of gotta exhaust that option a little bit, at least, and do more than just dialogue. That too,
and it being one of the first movies to do it, too.
Yeah, that's very fair. I think one thing it could have done better in that regard, though, is like, if we are going to spend that long establishing, like, okay, this isn't, something psychological. This isn't like brain trauma that's like, physically detectable. Then we kind of need to figure out. We need to learn more in those scenes. Like, there's a screenwriting rule that I hear a lot, which is like, make your scene do more than one thing at a time. And I feel like those scenes are only really doing one thing at a time. And that was actually kind of where I leaned forward also. Like, when Father Karras is introduced and he starts saying, like, actually, exorcism is maybe not the best option here, and he kind of like runs through it. That was when I was leaning forward. I was like, I want this information. Like, I found that explanation when him and Chris meet. Like, that was actually very compelling. But again, I think the question that I'm posing here is a little bit less about, like, because the characters in the movie don't know the title of the movie they're in, so you can't have them be like, you can't make them self-aware to that. But also, like, I think at a certain point you just have to get to what the title is, essentially. Like, if you're doing that kind of movie where, like, the premise is very obvious to us either through marketing or through the title, you gotta, if you're not gonna get to it until a certain amount in, you gotta at least be giving us, like, essential backstory. You gotta be giving us some kind of information that's gonna be important later, like setups, or like, like I said, if we're not gonna learn, if we're gonna sit that long in those hospital scenes, we gotta get more information that's gonna be relevant later when the exorcism's actually happening. So, like, it's not that none of it is necessary, it's just stretched out. Like, you gotta just get through those scenes faster or make them denser, is kind of my lesson.
How long did we need to spend on the it's not a tracheotomy, I don't know the procedure name for it, but when they stick the needle in her thing and did we need
that grossed me out
for that long? That was, I'm not saying it would gross me out or anything. It was just like, why are we here? Why are we seeing this? Is it to show
I'm saying both of those
technical
things.
thing?
It grossed me out, and I was like, what is this doing here? Like, we can see it's a hospital, we can check that box. Like, I don't know. There might not be much more to it than that, but I think that was kind of I think it was a weakness of this movie, because Act 1 is important. Like, I am not one to advocate for, like, just get us to the genre stuff. Like, screw all this setup. I don't care about these characters. Like, no, spend the time to establish that. But I think this is a case where it takes too long.
Yeah. But by the time the possession went down, we were halfway through the movie, and there's still more for the characters to, like, figure out, like, why the demon's even there. And I don't even think we get that by the end. Even though by this point, I was giving them the benefit of the doubt, being in 1973. Like, do they know what an exorcism is? I don't know. I wasn't born in 1973.
No, I think that's well, and there's an extent to which I think, like, you got to give this movie credit to an extent for, like, establishing, like, a cinematic language for what possession and exorcism is. Like, I haven't seen the sequels to this, but, and maybe it's just through, like, the references and the Boondocks and Futurama or whatever that I've seen, but, like, this seems like it kind of wrote the book on, like, how do you present a possession.
Yeah.
And, like, props to it for that.
Yeah, that's why I never say it, because I don't know. Like, I don't know if it was the first to use these instances, but it's easily the most impactful. And its iconography is used in, like, every possession supernatural story going forward.
Yeah. Like, especially, like, the floating off the bed thing and stuff being...
The weird,
like,
just weird behavior in general, yeah.
The convulsions. Like, that's all there in that Boondocks episode. I think it's... And then Futurama, I think, has, like, a bunch of stuff, like, floating around the room or whatever, like...
Yep.
And those are pretty clear, like, call-outs. Like, they're pretty obvious in, like, we're homaging The Exorcist here, guys. Like, we're not just drawing on it. But other stuff, I think, does it to a lesser extent. Where it's like, all right, here's a shorthand. This person's possessed.
You really wouldn't have a lot of what exists today as far as possessions and ghost movies go without it. So I'm not going to discredit it for that in any way.
Well, I don't know if you wouldn't have
when
it
I think
without it. It's more that like this is like the template that you're going off of.
Yeah. When I think of this, I haven't fully seen any of these movies, but Paranormal Activity comes to mind as well. Those are possession movies, so I don't know if they're at any point doing a full exorcism, but I feel like that's drawn from this as well. Like, it's kind of hard not to if you're writing a ghost possession movie. So.
Yeah. David, did you have any responses to just the, like, being ahead of your audience? Because I feel like, again, like, you being the more seasoned person with this movie, like, is there something I'm missing in those scenes?
No, I don't think you're missing anything. I agree with a lot of, like, it, especially, like, we talked about Demi and his mom, that can be cut a lot. The set stuff can get cut a lot. I do think within her own... Reagan's getting tested, all of that stuff, and her brain and her throat. I think a lot of the emphasis is on the mom's reaction in those moments, because you're supposed to kind of feel for, like, because she's even, like, turns away when she sees that, and you're supposed to really feel for, like, this woman will go so far for her kid, but even this is, like, a lot, and you know how much further it's going to have to go, because you know it is a possession movie. And I think literally they ride that wave of the audience always being ahead until that, like, older priest dies. I think once, like, you walk in the door and the older priest is dead, everybody is on the exact same page. And everyone is like, okay, well, now what? What is next? And that's my personal favorite part of the film because of that reason.
Yeah, well... I don't want to, like, spend too long on semantics, but you just using the phrase ride that wave feels like it's a hook that's keeping the audience there. I kind of feel like that's them being behind the ball. Like, I think you can do it either way. Like, I was thinking of, like, Batman Begins is, like, another movie where Batman doesn't show up in his, like, true Batman form for the first half of the movie, but the first act, or like whatever you want to call the first half up to that point, we're still getting stuff. And I feel like there is something where, like, the title is promising us, like, stick with us, guys, we're gonna get to Batman. Whereas in this movie, the title feels like it's almost like a spoiler. It's like, okay, if you want this to be a reveal, bad job, I knew that when I bought my ticket. Like, I don't know, and maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, but, like, do you see, when you're, and again, I don't want to lock you into this phrasing, but when you say, like, they're riding that wave, are you saying that as, like, the writer is, like, taking advantage of the fact that we are, like, anticipating the exorcism, or are they, like, behind the ball and having to, like, make up for the fact that we already know where it's going?
I think it's more the first one where you're anticipating the exorcism. I think a lot of what the writer and the director are doing is with each scene, they're trying to up the stakes of you thinking, well, how much worse can this get? Like, you're watching her just masturbate with a crucifix. And she's bleeding, and she just sexually assaulted her mother and then slapped her. Is it going to get worse than that? Well, we're only halfway in the movie. It has to. And, like, that kind of concept of we can't imagine how worse it's going to get. And then right when it's kind of at its almost worst, we get this beacon of hope from the beginning in this like grand priest character, and then he just flat out gets murked. So then it like really just sits there at that point, and it's just like, okay, here we are at the moment that we have been building up and telling you about this whole time, and now what will happen? And we learn that he has to kill himself.
I think it's
I
maybe
honestly
a
didn't
combo.
know.
Go ahead.
I didn't know where it was going once the priest died either, honestly. So, yeah, it got me there.
Yeah, I do think like it establishes like all of the build up, and maybe we'll get into this more with your topic, David. But like, I do think for all of my gripes with the build up, by the time it got to the exorcism scene, I was excited for it. I was like, all right, cool. We've like got good power scaling here, like with the demon. Well, like if you want to call it that, like is it like
No, I
think
that's a funny word for it. Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the language it's trading in a little bit, though. Like we spent so long, building up to it that I'm like, yeah, that's
a fair word for
ready
it.
for us, or like I'm ready for it to be like, all right, let's have the showdown now. Like, I don't know who's gonna come out on top. I feel like they create a good amount of uncertainty, and I think just to go back to like what we were talking about a minute ago. I think, David, maybe, like, kind of to what you were saying about, like, riding the wave. Like, the fact that you're saying, like, if we're getting all of this crazy possession stuff that Reign is doing, and it's only halfway, I think that maybe combines with, like, the shock value a little bit, where if you are watching this in the 70s and you are shocked by that earlier stuff, then maybe it is creating an anticipation of like, oh damn, we've got an hour left of this movie, or at least like you can tell there's more to come, so like how much worse can this get? I think that could be a very valid reaction, but again, it's probably a little more likely back in the 70s than with anyone watching it now. I didn't have any more on my topic here, so if you guys had more, go ahead. But that was all my points.
Do you have anything, Jelani? Yeah, I'm trying to think if there is anything besides what we talked about. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. Alrighty, so I'll just get into my topic, which was the pace of the movie, which has been, I think, a big central discussion of all of our topics.
Yeah.
The pace, for me, majority of the time it does work, barring those scenes where I do think, like, the Demi stuff is a little long, and then the set stuff I really don't need. Like, she can really just host the party, and that be that, and just be like, these are my friends, and I would have bought it all, and just been like, I don't need to know how you know these people. You're an adult, you have your own life, bring your friends over. But other than that, I do enjoy... I am a fan of slow burns usually in general, but I do enjoy how slow it takes to get there, just seeing the normal interactions between Regan and her mom and seeing their relationship a little bit, so that by the time she does get possessed and it gets worse and worse, it is that stark contrast. A lot of paranormal movies don't really do that anymore. A lot of them, like the most recent Exorcist Believer, you get one scene with the girls. It's when they're dropped off at school, and then they come back from the woods and they're possessed, and the ball starts rolling by like 20 minutes in, and I don't feel as jarred by it, mainly because I didn't get to see them be normal kids for a little bit. And I really do find that impactful in this film, especially Linda Blair being such a good performer. It's just incredible to think that the girl from the beginning is that same girl tied to that bed. It's just, you completely see them as two different entities. Wow. But yeah, that's pretty much where I fall on like the pacing of it. I find it quite successful, even still today. I never get scared of the film, but I am always entertained by it and able to still be sustained by just the pacing and the characters and like that general tension of the mom wanting to save her daughter by any means and never being able to. I find that all very successful, whereas more supernatural movies today, And maybe it is the lack of novelty and it's being desensitized to it, but nowadays it does feel a little bit more forced, and I don't really buy it as much. But I do buy their relationship in that movie. But I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say more so on the pacing.
I was gonna ask before that, like, where do you think the horror stems from for this horror movie?
I think it's a few things. I think it's the mom and the daughter thing, like you kind of said about the fear, the lack of control of a mom watching herself lose her daughter right in front of her and not being able to do anything about it. I think that's a pretty horrific thing. I also think, just in general, so many more people were already at that point aware of religion and still into the ideologies behind it, or they were aware and starting to break away from it. So when you get like a little bit of body horror with the testing and stuff, that kind of triggers that a bit, but also it going through science and trying everything and saying this will not work, this will not work, this will not work, I think also for people at that time maybe shook them a bit as they were starting to go from their faith and leaning really heavy into science, and then even seeing the faith fail and the demon's just gonna kill the priest.
Yeah.
The holy water's not really holy water. You have no real control, and I think that's really the center point of all of the fear in this movie is the lack of control.
Okay, I see that a bit more, where like I didn't realize earlier, everything they're trying is like the science, the religion, nothing actually works by the end. I can see the horror coming from that. Like you said, no control. Okay, I get that a bit more.
That is a good point. Zolani,
like
did you have any on the pacing? 'Cause I do, but if you want to go with that.
As I said, I have the track record of just not being the biggest fan of the slow burn. Like, I get it, and it's definitely a thing, but for me to sit through a slow burn, the reveal has to be something special, and not a lot of people know. Like, I don't even know what is special enough for me to like be like, okay, I'm glad I sat through that. Like, there's different reveals every single time when it comes to stuff like this. So Breaking Bad is an example. Many may not agree with me, but I feel like that show was a slow burn, honestly. I think I might have enjoyed it more if I knew that Breaking Bad was a slow burn, plus the fact that the characters kind of sucked, but that's another topic. Like, everybody just sucked by the end. Behind Her Eyes was a Netflix show. I don't think it was horror, it was more thriller and psychological. There's another example of a slow burn, and my mom was telling me, she's the one that pushed me to just get through it. The reveal for that was just enough for me to not hate it. Like, cause if you that's the risk, in my opinion, my experience watching slow burns and just media in general. Like, if you're going to make me sit through 8+ episodes or 2-hour long movie, like, your reveal has to be something special for me to have spent the time with you, like, stringing along for the ride, forcing myself to get through it. Like, you have to have something special by the end, and that's why slow burns is just it normally just not for me, because I haven't seen or experienced a lot where I'm just like, y'all got that. I said it doesn't need to be, as long as I don't feel bad for any of the characters in this either. I think characters, the more I'm watching things and reflecting on them, the more I realize characters are kind of important to me. It didn't used to be. It used to just be plot, and I'm just like, all right, as long as things happen, I'm here for it. But like, I don't care about I don't care about any of these people. So seeing Reagan, I'm on the opposite end, David. Seeing Reagan pre-possession into her transformation did nothing for my emotions or reactions. And I might need to self-reflect on that. But
Well, I'll back both of you up a little bit on that, because like you, Jelani, like I don't feel like I don't have anything against Reagan by the time they're like, you know, if it's asking you to be invested, like I don't have anything against her, but I wasn't like I'll watch this character do anything. Like I wasn't super compelled. But I do agree with your point from a few minutes ago, David, that like when you're saying like comparing to these other movies where you get one scene with the kid and then they're possessed. I think there is value in the amount of time we spend with Reagan. Like by the time she is possessed, we've had time to kind of get used to normal Reagan. And I think you do there is something lost when you have that like almost instant possession because you know, you can't emulate the experience that her mom has of knowing and watching this kid grow for 12 years. But if you give us 20 minutes instead of 10, yeah, that matters. Like 3 scenes instead of 1, that counts for a lot. And I think that is worth noting. But yeah, to back you up also, Jelani, like, do I care that this kid is being possessed? Like, granted, there's a lot of kid characters that, like, are just annoying out the gate, and I'm like, get this kid out of here. Kill the kid in Home Alone. I don't want him around. I'm rooting for the bandits in that movie. Like, it doesn't do that. So, like, and I only say that because I feel like the way kid characters are written in movies is often, I'm just like, I just want them to die because they're just so goddamn annoying. But like, yeah, I don't feel like this gives us much to like get invested in Reagan, and in some cases, like that can give me a ton of mileage. I feel like and you know, it can happen with kid characters. Like, I don't know how long it takes in some cases, but I know some of my like favorite performances of the past few years are, and it's not even always stuff that I've finished, but like Amandla Stenberg in The Hate You Give, or Kiernan Shipka in the what is it, Sabrina Teenage Witch Show, or Daphne Keane in His Dark Materials. Those are 3, like, they're not kids, they're more teenagers. I guess Lyra's more of a kid. Anyway, like, those are 3 characters where I was like, I'll watch you do anything. Like, I care so much about them, and I forget how long it takes, but like, it is not impossible to invest me in a kid character, and actually, like, if you can do it if they are a kid, sometimes that does elevate it. But also, if they're annoying, I want that little shit out of here as fast as I can, much more when it's a kid. So I don't know if that's just me.
Oh my god, I want him to die so much.
Yeah, like, and I feel like it's more often that I see the annoying kid in movies, but like it's very possible, and I feel like in this case it's kind of neutral, but that does count for a lot. And maybe you know, in 20 minutes, I don't know if you can get us on board, especially if we're bracing ourselves for like this person's gonna, you know, essentially not be in the movie for the second, like, you know, it's not Reagan that we're dealing with. So how much do you want to like try to get us invested in a case like this? I don't know. But I think you're both right. That was a very long way of saying it, but yeah.
So for me, again, personally, it takes a lot for me to, I mean, it's rare I actually get invested into characters in stories. I don't have to be invested into characters in order to like a story, but it definitely helps. And I don't think it helps that it's a horror film. Going in, I'm just thinking, like, knowing it's a horror film, I'm thinking anybody can get the axe. Like, anybody can die at any moment.
Do you try to keep it at a distance because of that? Because I know some people who do that. Like, they don't try to get invested in something like this because they know everyone is up for, like, bait.
I think so.
Yeah. I don't even think it's like conscious. Like, I'm not like, oh, I like them, but it's a horror movie. Like, I think it's just subconscious.
I think the last time it strongly affected, it's really just Jordan Peele movies. I mean, those recent memory,
job.
like, yeah, I don't ever want Daniel Kaluuya's character to die ever. Like, that's why I was kind of sad. That I thought the ending was kind of ambiguous of Nope, but especially like specifically Get Out. Like, I needed him to make it out of that, especially as the main character. Like, so going in and knowing this is a horror movie, and I just, like with any of the Final Destination movies, like I know most of you are gonna die, so be as present on screen as you can, and try to win me over. But
yeah, well, I think that counts for a lot, because like if we're looking at Jordan Peele's, at least, like, let's just take Daniel Kaluuya in both Get Out and Nope. Like, I guess in Nope there's a little more of like, because his dad dies at the beginning, so there's a little bit more of a like, here, we're gonna give you like something to emotionally invest you and get you on his side. I don't think we have a scene like that in Get Out. Like, he's going into a situation that, like, you know, in his mind he's just like, I'm meeting my girlfriend's parents. Like, you know, we can sympathize with that a little bit at least, but I feel like the sympathy for his character just comes from watching him deal with the situation in like a really grounded way. And like, I think that's kind of all that you have in most horror movies, but Get Out and, you know, like Jordan Peele writing and Daniel Kaluuya performing, like, they just do it really well. I don't know that there's like a scene in that movie that sells Chris for me in a way that I'm not sold on Reagan or Wendy from Final Destination. Like, they just make you care about this character like organically.
Yeah, for my taste, like, it's a rare case to get me to like super invest into a character. So in a horror movie, you kind of have to do double the work, and I don't want to blame this movie for not making me invest in like most of the characters, because again, I go in thinking anybody can die, so I'm gonna just watch. If it scares me, good. If it don't, might need to go back to the drawing board. But I think it's also in part not just it being a horror movie, but knowing Reagan gets possessed at all. Like that, it's not really a spoiler, because I would assume it was in marketing or something. I can't go back to 1973 to know, but knowing she gets possessed, like knowing she's going to transform at some point, I don't think helps either. Like, I don't think that also, because we're on the topic of slow burn, like that doesn't help the slow burn pace to me either. Like, knowing like we're in the desert right now, there's a pendant to get. Okay, now we're spending time with the title character, the exorcist himself, Father Karras. Cool, he's with his mother. She calls him Dimmy. Awesome. Okay, Reagan's mother acts. Okay, now we see Reagan. Okay, now we got some time between the two of them. They have a nice conversation about Mr. Burke. Okay, Mr. Burke's dead. When are we getting to the possession? And I've seen, clips from this movie, so I know who would be possessed. But I just couldn't be bothered to care.
I think you make a good point of, like, you have to do double the work. I would build on it and say, I think you either have to do double the work to get us invested if it's a horror movie, or you take the Final Destination approach and do half of the work to signal to us,
and
like,
make them
bother.
as memorable as possible.
Yeah,
in the time, or give them some sort of trait that you can. You might not remember the names. I'm surprised I remembered any of their names when we did the episode, but I think I only forgot Goth Girl Erin's name. But make them as memorable as possible, because with just the premise that not everybody's making it. So find a trait to stick and proudly present to the audience. You got dumb jock guy. You got
like the archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or
give
like
something.
Yeah, your whole topic for that episode, David, was cannon fodder characters. Like, signal to us that they're gonna be cannon fodder, so we can have fun with it and not bother. or like you were saying, Jelani, if you're not going to do that, you kind of got to do double the work. I think the death zone is like the middle ground, and I think you could argue this movie goes in the middle ground. Or to bring it back like to the first episode we did for this, I think Psycho kind of gives you double. I think we get invested in Marion in the first half of that.
Okay.
And again, like that movie does a little bit of a better job hiding itself as a horror movie for the first half, where like we don't actually have those like guardrails up where we're like, oh well, she's gonna get clapped at some point, so like let's not get too attached. Like I think that's a case where it does double the work.
Yeah. I didn't have anything else on Slow Burn, Evan, if you had more notes.
I'd have a couple, I think. Like I said before, I don't think we need a lot of this. I think this is a bit too slow. But it does build us up to the exorcism, and I think, like you were saying, Jelani, like, if the whole point of a slow burn is that you're giving me a good payoff, this is a pretty decent payoff, I think. I would have liked if it was more, but I will say the payoff is decent. I think for slow burns more broadly, I kind of have an issue with it in general, especially for TV shows. Like, I feel like once a week, I'll walk by a couple people at work talking about, like, either my coworkers or, like, someone at a table being like, oh, yeah, you got to get through, like, 4 episodes of this show before it gets good.
Yeah,
and I'm like...
You lose me at that.
I won't even hear the title, and I'm just like, nope, I'll watch a movie instead. I don't want to spend that long. Like, I don't care. Like, especially with a TV show where I feel like my favorite shows are ones where I'm like, I don't have to be hooked into what's happening next. I am here because... every time I watch an episode of this, it's a good experience. Like, every one of my favorite shows is pretty much that.
How many times have you heard, oh, the first few seasons, you got to get through the first few
yeah,
like season 1 and 2, you got to just get... No, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And I think it's a bad
Chase,
hook. Or, yeah, keep going.
Chase, friend of the pod, said that about Better Call Saul, and I was just like, I could not barely, but I finished Breaking Bad, and you're telling me like 1 or 2 of the seasons of Better Call Saul I gotta get through to get to like this one character you think I might like? No.
Yeah, I think that's even a slower burn, so stay away from that.
Yeah.
Don't go near it.
Yeah.
I'm good off that.
I think so. There seems to be an audience for it. Maybe it's just that the 3 of us aren't, but I just have a low tolerance for it because it, like, you can have a great payoff, but like you also you got to get me to the end. Like, to its credit, and you know, slight teaser for our next episode, but like I like to compare Game of Thrones versus the MCU, where like I will watch any episode of Game of Thrones over any single MCU installment and have a better time, but I'd rather watch Endgame than season 8. So like, you know, there's a few things that have both, where like you can have a, like, I think Last Airbender was, I think something I said when we got to the end of that was like, yeah, good ending, and I loved it almost every episode. Like, there were maybe 5 episodes that I like don't want to go back to. Like, great experience all the way through. But like the slow burn is kind of like basically telling you, we're gonna be Endgame. You gotta sit through Ant-Man and the Wasp and like Thor the Dark World, but we're gonna give you Endgame, we promise. Like, stick with us, guys. And I think that's just a much harder sell. Like, I was disappointed with season 8 of Game of Thrones as anyone, but I'll take a Game of Thrones every time, because I'll actually get to season 8 and be disappointed when I get there, but I'll get there.
Yeah, in my mind, it ended after 6. It's so crazy. Why'd they stop making the show? It was so successful. Wow.
Yeah. When you said The Last Airbender, I was gonna ask, you mean the show, right? And then I realized there's nothing but the show.
No, sorry, my boy M. Night. Like, I gotta stand for that guy.
Who? What? There's a... Are you telling me there's a movie?
I don't... What? They shouldn't do that.
I don't...
Right.
Yeah,
I don't think they should. The Avatar.
But
I don't
yeah,
know
I'll
what
take
you're
Avatar
referring
any
to.
day. Any episode, any day.
We gotta watch Korra. That'll be an upcoming at some point. We'll watch Korra.
That's gonna be a rough one for me.
Oh no, I've only seen season 1.
All right, we got 30 minutes.
One.
Sorry, I know we like
sure,
our tangents, but we are on a time limit here, and there's another topic. David, did you
have
have more, or yeah, do you guys have more on the slow burn? I was done.
No, I have the takeaways thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move into that. So, like we did for the Dark Knight trilogy, and I think we did it for Avatar as well.
Probably.
And maybe Pirates, I think, too. But anyway, we're going to do just looking back from Psycho, Nope, Final Destination, and The Exorcist. We're just going to each do a takeaway, like a creative takeaway that we're taking from this whole cycle, or more than one. Yeah, I'll just say this was not going to be one of mine. I'm going to take the conversation we just had about character, like either do it doubly get us invested, or go halfway. I think in horror specifically, probably true of other genres, but I think especially horror. Like, I won't elaborate because we talked about it, but I think that's a takeaway that I am going to do. Do either of you want to go first with this?
I'll go first. For me, the biggest takeaway is horror is the most successful when it plays into theater of the mind, and our imagination is the scariest thing that we have. And once, like Jelani said it a lot of times, once you see it and you're able to compartmentalize that visual, the horror is kind of fleeting. And even like with The Exorcist, of these films, I think The Exorcist probably is the least scary to me. Like the shower scene in Psycho, I'll take over anything that happens in The Exorcist, because a shower is a sensory deprivation tank where it's just sound, you're getting touched, it's wet, it's so much happening you can't see because the unknown beyond that curtain is huge. And the only time this movie taps into that in full effect to me is that priest scene, because then finally it's like everything is unknown and we're just gonna have to see how this ends in the last 5 minutes. And same through A Final Destination. And with Nope, so much of the success of that is the theater of the mind and the unknown and what we do to ourselves when we watch these stories. And I think when we get to Halloween with my next two, that's a huge one as well that taps into that. And it's just, that's my favorite kind of horror. Even when reading horror, that's my favorite kind of horror.
I can't tell you when I was growing up how many times like I shampooed my hair and then tried to quickly get the soap out of my eyes and check to make sure there was nobody ready to kill me. I hadn't even seen Psycho by that point, but irrational fears. Yeah. I have a couple. Number one, the takeaway from the horror trilogy, quadrilogy.
I think we're counting Psycho, yeah. So quadrilogy.
I guess. Be scary. Be scary. Like, if you can't scare me, bro, even if it's something niche or something people wouldn't think about being scared of, like log trucks, like, this is your one job to be classified as a horror movie. Be scary, please. I think we kind of touched on it. Don't reveal your monsters at all if you can help it, or wait till the very end. I wouldn't say not to reveal your monsters. I think Alien does it really well from what I've seen of it. I haven't fully seen that movie either, but if we're going to spend a majority of the time in your movie with characters before some of them die, make them memorable at the very least, like Evan said. And be creative with your monster if your horror film has one. Creativity really goes a long way in stuff like this. Like, it's supposed to be fantastical, so yeah.
Yeah, I think to quote something that David said way back in our Godzilla vs. Kong episode, show me how many mouths the xenomorph has. Like, get us all of the, like, show us everything. If you're gonna, like, don't just give us, I mean, not to come at a something that's considered iconic, but is Predator that cool of a monster? It's a alien with, yeah. I don't personally. I don't.
I
find
think
it
so.
that good.
Cooler
No,
than
not
the
design
Xenomorph?
wise, but not better
Okay.
than the Xenomorph.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
As long
fair
as we
enough.
all agree.
Absolutely.
I think the Predator is kind of a boring design, like physically, but yeah,
No,
in
the
terms
Alien
of
is one
like,
of the coolest.
yeah,
To me,
I love
he's
the Xenomorph.
coolest.
Yeah.
I love the Xenomorph so much. And I do think Predator gets scarier when he takes his mask off. Like when that finally
That's what I'm
happens at
thinking.
the
That's
end of
where
the
I was
movie.
thinking. Yeah.
That's when you're
Yeah.
like, what the hell? Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. That's all my takeaways.
Okay. Well, mine is not. Mine might sound like it is contradicting one of yours, but it's not. My takeaway is do more than scare us, because I unlike you am not typically scared by horror movies. Like, I think A Quiet Place, the jump scares got me in a fun way, but that's the only time that happened. And granted, I haven't like tested too many waters with like the jump scare side of horror, just because I haven't. But like, I think I'm maybe like across these 4 movies, I am like scared at all maybe like 3 times in any of these. Like a couple of the I talked about with Final Destination, like I was a little paranoid after, so it got me there. There's a couple of shots in Nope that I think are like kind of get me in that like fight or flight area.
That house
with like
scene.
the animals. Which one?
The house scene too, with when it's raining and it's over the
And it
house.
just like
it's
vomits
raining
on them.
blood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that gets me.
That's not one for me. Mine's, I think I mentioned the one where Gordy's like coming at the camera. That one gets me.
Ooh.
And then a couple of like, I think just the presence of like Jean Jacket throughout like the second half kind of hits for that too. But that's a little bit more fun than like scary. I just think it's kind of cool.
An odd one that gets me from Nope is when OJ realizes the cloud wasn't moving. Like, it's not played to be horror or horrific in any of its direction, but just when you think about how much you just don't notice if you keep your head down and how much could be going on around you, and it's just like that, I always think like, well, that's very unsettling. I need to look out more.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, that is just not where I find these movies engaging. Is like I don't like these because I get scared by them, because I generally kind of don't. But I think all of these have at least something compelling to them, and like beyond the fear that they're trying to generate. And I think that's like, I as somebody who doesn't vibe with horror movies can still like be engaged or get something out of these. Like Nope, I think it's just a blast every time I watch it, and it has some really compelling themes. Psycho has a good character story in the first half and some like really good Hitchcock tension scenes in the second half. Final Destination, like, it's kind of trashy, but I was leaning forward in all of those death scenes. Like it got me with the anticipation. Like it worked. And I kind of hate to say it, I think The Exorcist is my least favorite of these 4 that we did, but that exorcism scene, really solid. And there's like, I think a 90-minute cut of this movie could be a half-star higher for me. Like, I think I could have, I saw that there's a director's cut that's even longer, and I don't want that. I want this to be the director's cut and the theatrical one to be 90 minutes, personally. But, like, that, I think that is my takeaway, is just, like, give us, like, mystery is a good way to do it, like checking both boxes, because you can have, like, fear of the unknown, but also, like, a mystery is just a good way to make your audience lean forward, whether they're scared or not. And I don't know if this is a theory I'm, like, willing to stand by super hard, but maybe when horror movies just try for scares, that's when they become cheap and forgettable and just try to do, like, disturbing imagery and jump scares just to be like, ha, see, we got you. You're scared. Boom. We win.
Honestly, it's the same with horror games. Like, biggest example I can think of recently that everybody probably knows about by this point is Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, that originally was just cheap jump scares, the game. but games like PT, I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. That stays with you. It was a canceled video game, and I've never wanted a horror game to be made as badly as that one. It was Hideo Kojima and Norman Reedus was supposed to be the main character, and you're going through hallways, but it's the same hallway and something's a little different every time.
Oh, that's
you go
that
through.
game.
I
know what that
wanted
is.
to see that game so badly because I've never felt that way, that those chills from a horror game since that or before that. Like, and now it's been announced Hideo Kojima and Jordan Peele are working on a horror video game, and oh boy,
Wow.
I think I might even buy it just to support them working together. Like, the idea of them doing something together is absolutely nuts. But
I mean, if any name
just-
is going to get me to buy a horror game, it's Jordan Peele. I've never played horror games. I don't think I would enjoy them, but
I played
it's
Outlast.
Jordan Peele.
That
Oh.
game.
That
Well,
could
the
be
second
funny.
one. I'm sorry. I streamed the second game, and what scared me more than actually being outside in that game was the school scenes where you're by yourself and literally anything can happen. But sorry, I was saying all that to support your point, Evan. Don't go for the cheap stuff. Make stuff that'll like stick with people. That's kind of the point of movies. Like, you don't want people to just forget, right?
I think it
You want them
depends.
to come back. Well, it depends on what you're making. Like,
yeah.
Transformers, I don't think is gonna stick with people. But
I think it notoriously does not stick with people because of Michael Bay's visual style. You're just like, bleh, two trucks smashing, bleh, junkyard, explosions,
Yeah.
Megan
it
Fox.
depends on-
Dullest color palette.
I would
orange
disagree
and
with you there.
blues.
I kind of like the color palette in that.
It's a lot of orange and blue.
A lot of orange and blue.
Even the people are normally like orange in hue.
Well,
Sweaty.
whenever, like, Michael Bay is one of the worst offenders of, like, we're in the Middle East, everything is yellow. Like, he's one of the most extreme offenders of that trope, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend going for the, if you want to like last, if you know the type of movie you want, go for the, you can go for scares, of course. That's like, to me, that's the main thing. Go for that. But also say something.
Yeah.
Or make it
I
about.
think
Make it about
I think
something.
I'm gonna push back on you a little bit because I'm with you, except that I don't think you have to do that because Final Destination I don't think does any of those, and that was still a good time. Like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna watch any of those others, but
You could say
It was fun.
It was telling you to be careful.
yeah,
That's what it was
which is
saying.
not a bad
Be
lesson. Like, it's not that deep, but
Hey.
it's like, hey, don't pick up
Maybe-
those scissors.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Do a double take at your kitchen knives. Were they there before?
Right.
Or did
Be
Death
a bit
move
more
them?
aware and cautious of your
Yeah.
surroundings.
Obey the signs
like
at the
something.
tanning salon. I bet a lot of people took tanning salon rules more seriously after they watched Final
Don't be
Destination
stupid.
3.
Final Destination is saying don't be stupid because a lot of those deaths are those people's faults.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. And again, I mean, maybe to really tie it back to Psycho, be careful, like, what the message is, because, that kind of has an undertone of, like, watch out for men wearing dresses. And, again, I don't think that movie is necessarily cancel worthy because of that, but there's been impacts. So, do both. Have fun, say something, but watch your message, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to push back a bit on the, like, you have to be memorable, because there's a place for, like, the trashy side of this, and, like, I don't want to say that, like, everything should go for that, but it has its place, and
For sure.
like, and I've kind of come to appreciate that, like, in other genres, like, just
Oh yeah.
like, you can have, like, I'd rather watch something that's, like, campy and, like, In Time is a movie that I love, because it just goes really hard. I don't want In Time to like take itself more seriously. I love that it commits to the bit so hard. Like I think I said it when we did that episode. In Time over Limitless any day. Like Limitless tries to go for that like broad appeal, say something. In Time says something, but it's like I don't know. I think you can. There's actually kind of an art to low art, and I've come to appreciate that more.
Lucy
recently.
Over Psycho, Halloween, Alien, any day.
Yeah, because Lucy is trying to say something.
Reaction. No, yeah,
Lucy's
is
trying to say
something.
What are
Compared
you
to,
doing
like,
with that
Halloween?
10% of your brain?
Come on, David.
All right. Are we good on your guys' lessons there? Takeaways?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to close it out before we get to the boilerplate, I think it'd be fun if we did this with other genres. I don't know what we could, like, how we want to narrow it down, but, like, maybe someday we do, like, 3 courtroom dramas, 3 rom-coms, something like that.
Oh, God, I'm not looking forward to that. 3 rom-coms. Jesus.
I
agree,
think if
though.
we all find one, I have like 2 I could nominate. I think it's not a genre that I'm
rom-coms?
super into, but guys, Long Shot. Everybody is sleeping on Long Shot. Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen. Check it out.
Oh, I thought
Someday
you were
we're-
saying Long Shot, but
Like this
No.
is gonna
Like
be a
you were
long shot,
going
and
to-
then tell us
yeah.
the movie.
No,
Yeah, I
if you
didn't
guys
know
shoot
that.
me down on the like 3 rom-com cycle, that's fine. I'm gonna make us do Long Shot someday anyway because I just like it. But yeah, I think it's worth exploring. And for listeners, if you want us to do another cycle like this and you have a pitch for one, like let us know. And transition, you can let us know in our Discord, which has technically existed for a while, but we're gonna kind of like formally launch it here. I'm gonna put a link in the show notes. We're all on there. I am not the most active Discord person, but I check it most days, and I think if we had a fan community, I would check it more often. But you can let us know stuff. We're gonna start making channels within that. So if you're interested, if you want feedback, if you want to see, I'm planning on. I think we should make, just given that it's the 3 of us in there, we should make a Raimi memes Discord or a Spider-Man memes Discord or a channel. So if you want to see the weird Spider-Man memes that we send to each other, we'll probably have some of that. But yeah, that's going to be a new thing. Our next episode, we kind of teased it a little bit. We're going to do something that we haven't done before. Jelani, I don't know if you want to pitch this because this was originally your idea.
right.
If you want me to take it, but I don't want to steal your thunder.
we're gonna start doing tournaments. So to like kick off, but also like test the waters with this idea, we're gonna do what is it, 16 bracket?
Yeah.
16 peak movie MCU tournament, best of the best. We ranked it from, is it most like highest rated to lowest rated? Like
Yeah.
that's how we paired
Yeah,
it?
that's how we seeded
Okay.
it. And to clarify the parameters, we are just doing the Infinity Saga, so everything, like
Yes.
anything from Iron Man to Spider-Man Far From Home, the one that came out just after Endgame. We're limiting it to that. We're not doing anything that came out later. And we'll go through it, like the actual candidates in the episode. But since, like, just to keep it a clean 16, there's a few that we're not even going to bother with. And I don't think anyone's going to be mad at the ones that we chopped. Yeah, Thor: The Dark World, you know who you are. But yeah, but that's going to be fun. That's going to be our next episode. And we'll clarify like the rules of that when we get there. But it's us. So if you want to know what the actual best MCU movie is, you know where to go. And we don't know either yet. We're going to find out day of.
Yeah.
for other stuff, you can check out our YouTube channel. Our rating systems video essay is the most recent big video that's out. And for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, other platforms, we are now putting up video versions. So if you wonder what our faces are doing during this, you can now find out for new episodes. But also, please support us on Patreon, because doing these video versions is not entirely free. So if you want us to keep doing that, it's not a ton per month, but if you shoot us $1, that is more possible. And you get some cool episodes like us talking about John Wick, and way back in the day, me and Jelani not entirely soberly railing against Spider-Man, the Raimi trilogy, and watch-alongs of Chicken Little, which, again, you should not... I've said this on other episodes, you should not watch Chicken Little, but if you do, please do it with our watch-along, because
don't do
it's
that
probably going to be the best time you can have watching that movie. Because God, is it bad. Also, for another Patreon perk, we are going to have a new Tangents episode soon. I've been compiling our tangents from the past year.
Oh, we have a new one coming?
Yeah, I think we didn't really have any tangents today, but if we have any during the MCU episode, I'll add that to it, and there's going to be some good ones in there. Closing it out, our logo's by Kelsey Hendry. I'm on Letterboxd at ev_Wes, and where are both of you guys at?
Instagram, Jelani T. Kelly. YouTube, Jelani T. Kelly. That's it.
I'm on the stairs that Homeboy kills himself with. Those iconic.
Oh, I thought you were upside down on the stairs with Reagan.
No. I'm on the stone stairs where he dies. And I think that's in Washington, D.C. I think that's where it is. So come see me at the Capitol. I'll be on the steps.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.